All right, everybody, we're back on Skywatchers Radio, right here live on the Dark Matter Radio Network. Of course, also on PSN Radio. Check us out on skywatchersradio.com. Without further delay, we have our guest of the evening, Mr. Preston Peet, is on the line with us. Preston, welcome to the show. Thank you for being on with us on Skywatchers Radio, my friend.
Good evening, Angel. Thanks for having me, Alan. Thank you, both of you, for having me on.
No worries.
Definitely. My pleasure.
Now, we're going to get into a lot of conversation when it comes to ancient aliens tonight, and I know you have, you've written about the subject. I want to first get, your information to the audience of, your work before we delve into some of the misconceptions within the ancient alien theory. Tell us a little bit about your background before we start up on the actual ancient alien stuff.
Well, I want to make it understood that I'm the editor of this book, Ancient Aliens, Lost Civilizations, Astonishing Archaeology, and Hidden History, the Disinformation Guide to.
Right.
And I'm the editor, so I both contributed and collected all of the other contributors to the compendium. And my background is really as an investigative journalist, mainly focused on the war on drugs, but I also focus on a lot of other fringe, not status quo, really followed topics. I'm a big conspiracy buff and researcher. I've done a lot of work in that field. And UFOs naturally attract my attention, and ancient aliens is a topic that ties right into my other interests in mysteries of archaeology and ancient civilizations. So I'm always fascinated by the topic, and I've been fascinated by the topic since I was a little kid. I remember being fascinated with the whole aliens bringing people back that they had abducted in Close Encounters of the Third Kind. I remember seeing that as a elementary school student and just being fascinated with it. And Eric Van Doniken was pretty prominent in my life around the same time. I was just becoming aware of his Chariots of the Gods and related topics like that. Nazca lines were another fascinating idea for me. So that really lit into me at a young age. And as I got older, I got the opportunity to collect the work of some of my favorite writers in the field of lost civilizations, as well as ancient aliens and ancient mysteries. And for my publisher, Disinformation, who had published my first book, which was on a completely unrelated topic, but also a fringe unaccepted at that time, particularly. It's not quite as controversial now with all the pot legalization going on, but it was pretty controversial at the time. Let me tell you, I still remember people asking me, do you really think marijuana is going to be legal in our lifetime? And me being hesitant to say yes. Answering like I wish, I hope, and optimistically, I certainly hope so, but I don't want to say for sure. So when I had the opportunity to put this book together, I leapt at the opportunity. That's really my background. I don't have any formal training in ufology, say, or even archaeology. I just have a vast appetite for knowledge, and I'm a voracious reader and have been since I was also a little kid. Reading was my very first addiction, and I've never tried to kick it, and I never will. I'm self-taught individual.
Now, what are some of the favorite, the stories that really caught your eye? The Nazca lines. What was the one story that when you were a kid you're like, damn, that's got to be real?
Well, God, when I was a kid, the Baalbek. The Chilathon, Baalbek, those three massive stones in the Sun Temple. I believe it's the Sun Temple. A lot of people say, the Romans put that there. And as a matter of fact, in the Ancient Aliens Debunks, he ascribes it to Romans, and I disagree. I disagree heartily. And I want to say for the record that as much as I told you last time we spoke, the segment on the Renaissance paintings in that movie, I was fascinated by it, and as I mentioned to you, I really learned some stuff in that because I'm not classically trained in the arts. Classical painting, I don't know, diddly about that topic. So it was really nice to find out that indeed there are representations of what to look for all the world to me to be UFOs, and people even in the background pointing at them, and their dog looking at the UFO hovering in the background of the painting. But that's in so many scores of paintings apparently, and that was an actual representation of John the Baptist or Jesus or whatever they were representing with that specific symbol in the painting. And it wasn't such such an outlandish thing after all. But while I put a lot of credence into his theory on that, or his explanation for that, I'm still dumbfounded at the idea that he spent 3.5 hours belittling other people's belief systems and their desire to believe in ancient aliens, and then turned around and appeared to me to put it down to, well, actually, there were angels. They were talking about angels. If you read the Bible says that these were angels. These were not aliens. These were angels. And he really made a real Christian slant to it, which is fine. I don't have anything against the Christian slant. I just thought it was interesting that he spent so much time saying this belief is wrong because you must believe in this story. Because I think there's just as little concrete proof for his version of events as there are for ancient aliens' version of events.
That goes back to like the question. That goes back to like the question of what are angels in the Bible, or were they misidentified aliens? They thought they were angels or spiritual of some kind. But...
Right. It all depends on your interpretation, right? And how much, like who was it, Carl Sagan, that said things that we don't understand, like science today would be magic to people in the past, and in our future, things that are just commonplace will seem like magic to us. Technologies, teleportation would seem magic to me.
Right. If
somebody from one room to the next, or from one country to the next, that Star Trek would seem magic to me.
Right.
Just like my cell phone would seem like magic to Wyatt Earp.
Can you imagine like building a time machine, going back just 100 years, and taking back like an iPad or a tablet or a smartphone? And obviously it won't work back then. You won't be able to call anybody, but just to be able to show like them that technology, people will be like, wow, that's sorcery, that's magic.
Right. You would have to have some way to prove to them that it did work. But that was the first thing that occurred to me too. Yeah, well, you need to take back the cell phone tower and somebody to actually be at the other end for you to demonstrate. But yeah, I would love to do that. There must be some technology we could take back where we didn't have to jump through that many hoops.
Unless they could find a way to make a smartphone that is so smart that at the subatomic level, somehow at the quantum level, it could connect to a signal on the other side of the portal. I don't know, something crazy like that. It's funny because there's a video from a Charlie Chaplin movie that surfaced a few years ago. I don't know if you guys have seen this, where there's a lady walking in the video and she could be seen with what looks like a cell phone in her ear, and she's like yapping away. Charlie Chaplin. Obviously, Charlie Chaplin. There was no cell phones back then, so. Interesting stuff. I mean, that could be proof of time travelers. It could be just coincidence.
Very well could be. It could be somebody adjusting the brim of their hat in some odd way, or they're tucking their hair behind their ear, and we just can't see it from the angle the photo is taken. But that's very interesting.
Now, being an editor of this book and collaborating with a lot of folks, I know, off air we were talking about some of the folks that collaborated with you on here. Giorgio Tsoukalos, one of our favorites from Ancient Aliens, as I like to call him, the hairdo.
Yeah, he gets a lot of commentary online about his hair.
The hairdo
Tsoukalos. About his man. Was it you that said he had a whole meme industry?
Man, I'll tell you what, nobody in ufology has had more funny memes online than Giorgio Tsoukalos.
Nobody. I don't think anybody has.
And the punchline in every meme is always aliens.
Aliens. It's aliens. Yeah,
it's aliens. My favorite one is, and I'm sure everybody knows exactly the meme I'm talking about because you guys have seen it. If you've Googled Giorgio Tsoukalos, you've seen some of the memes. My favorite one is one that is, the typical pose. He's there with his two hands stretched out, or his hands are out like he's about to say something. And it says on the top, the caption says, "Dollar goes in, soda comes out," and the bottom says, "Must be aliens."
Yeah,
right?
It's a tight answer. Yeah, I have to admit my jaw hit the table when I first saw him explain his Atlantis theory on the Ancient Aliens television show. where he postulates that Atlantis was not a continent per se. It was actually a gigantic spaceship that lifted up out of the water and up into the clouds, I take it, even though it explicitly says in the myth or in the tale that it sank beneath the waves. He wants it to go up into the air. Okay, more power to you, my friend.
He completely lost me with the whole Puma Punku section of the whole Puma Punku video on Ancient Aliens. They kind of lost me on that. I mean, I'm sure you're familiar with Puma Punku, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I'm fascinated with the place. I think it is very fascinating, and that's another thing where that Ancient Aliens Debunked movie. Yeah. Very interesting take on it, and some of the stuff he had to say made sense, but the fact that Puma Punku is built at such an extremely high elevation, it is above the tree line. It is on the barren plateau as far as I know.
Well, it is now, but we're talking about something that happened a long time ago.
Absolutely. You're right there.
Got to keep that into perspective.
There's postulation that the land there has risen. That lake wasn't always the way it was. That it was connected to the sea at one point. That there's evidence of harbors in that place. That there was actual water. I hesitate to say seafaring, but if it was connected to the ocean at some point, which is the theory I'm discussing, then it's quite possible that there were ships coming in and out of that place, say 10,000 years ago, 8,000 years ago, however many thousand, because there's, mainstream archaeology says, oh no, it's only 2,000 years old, 1,000 years old.
Right.
The Incas built it. Whereas other researchers, going back as far as Poznański, I believe is how you pronounce his name, Arthur Poznański, who in the turn of the century, early 1900s, did a lot of measurements and came to the conclusion that it was the oldest city on the planet, basically. That he put it as old as archaeologists are saying that Göbekli Tepe is in Turkey these days, 12,000 years old to the end of the last ice age. Yeah, I believe Graham Hancock goes into some deep detail about it in Fingerprints of the Gods. But, then there's the idea, well, those stones might not be in their original place from when they were first set. If the ground moved, how does he know that he's measuring the correct measurements? That's one question that always came to my mind. If the ground rose or sank, it wouldn't.
Well, that and also the adjacent towns nearby they've looted that area. I mean, they've gone in there and taken all kinds of
they've
things.
Gone in and gotten stone. Absolutely, yep. They've taken a lot of stone away. Absolutely, just like they did at the Great Pyramid. They took a lot of those casings away. When the casing stones get damaged by an earthquake, it makes it a lot easier to just go and take stones. I mean, they've dismantled entire pyramids in Egypt, carted them away that we're just now finding out about. I don't know if you've seen that documentary about the Band of Peace. It's like one of those 4-hour documentaries about ancient Egypt. It's online. You can catch it on YouTube and stuff. And one of the episodes, I believe it's on that show, one of the episodes they discuss a pyramid that's like one over in that Band of Peace where nobody knows about it. There's no tourists that go there really, but it's an entire pyramid like the Great Pyramid, or it's not quite that big, but it's nearly that big, except that it's all gone. It's only the underground parts that are left to it. There's nothing above ground hardly at all left to this pyramid.
Was it used for something else? Or
the natives came and they took all the stone away and took it into Cairo, basically, and built up sections of Cairo or whatever city is right next to that. I believe it's Cairo. I believe it's still Cairo.
I think you're right, yeah.
Preston, how disappointed are you when you read or you do your own research on some of the stuff that you've looked at in the past from ancient alien lore, and you find out that there's a perfectly reasonable explanation that is not even alien related or connected? I mean, how disappointed do you get?
I can't say I'm ever disappointed, really, because all knowledge to me is interesting. I'm always fascinated to find the answer, whether it's the one I'd prefer it to be or not. You know what I mean? I mean, just because it's not ancient aliens doesn't mean I'm going to go to bed all blue. But, there are plenty of times I go, oh, darn, that's, I really wanted that to be aliens.
Right.
As I got older, I know the pyramids weren't built by aliens, or at least I've decided that the pyramids weren't built by aliens, because I can't say I know anything. And That's one
Well,
of the
let me
things
ask
about
you,
the
if they
things.
weren't built by aliens, what are you saying is the date of when it was built?
Oh, I definitely ascribe them. A lot of the architecture, I can't say all of ancient ruins, and even Giza Plateau, but I think that the Great Pyramid and the Sphinx are both examples, and the Sphinx Temple, in front of the Sphinx that's down, however many meters below the surface of the ground. I think that's a lot older than mainstream archaeology says this. I think that
didn't they
Robert Schoch was right, and Giant
didn't they
West were
carbonate the
right.
Sphinx and it was like more than 20,000 years old or something like that?
What's that?
Didn't they carbon date the Sphinx, or wasn't
Well,
there like
they
some
didn't. They didn't carbon date it. You can't really carbon date a sculpture.
water date
They
it or whatever
decided,
it was.
yeah, because the water erosion.
Right, that's what it was. Yeah.
Robert Schoch said 7,000 years ago. He wouldn't go older than 7,000 years at the time because there wasn't anything else on Earth that he could point to and say, well, it's there's a precedent there. There's something.
Wait till Antarctica melts, then we'll see some stuff.
Right. But now they've got Göbekli Tepe, which is 7,000 years older than the oldest estimate of mainstream archaeology for the Great Pyramid. I mean, it's 5,500 years older than Stonehenge, in Turkey. This megalithic architecture, and I mean, it's on a massive scale. It's an entire hillside, where they think it's 12 to 14,000 years old. I mean, that's ancient. Those people weren't growing crops yet. According to the mainstream, they weren't domesticating cattle yet. They were barely civilized. They were hunter-gatherers, and yet there were, hundreds, if not thousands, of people congregating in this place in Turkey. At the end of the last ice age, literally, the ice age was still raging, and these people were gathering and constructing megalithic architecture on a major scale and transporting these stones miles and miles and erecting them and carving them intricately. I mean, it's fascinating. So there had to be I say that civilization definitely extended at least into the last ice age. There's so much evidence of modern humans to ancient dates. You look at some of the carvings that have been found, just like the little figurines that they can date, 40,000 years old. Some of these Venus carvings in Europe alone.
Yep.
I mean, that's ancient. And it might be Neanderthal. It might not be human. It might not be, Homo sapien, but it's still human. As far as I'm concerned.
You want to freak out? Scientists recently found a pipe. Okay, just a pipe for some kind of piping system.
Oh yeah,
in China, that is 150,000 years old.
What? Oh, I totally missed this story.
Oh, this is a crazy story. Look, check this out. It says here, 150,000-year-old pipe baffles scientists in China. It says, out of place in time. That's the article. This is a crazy story, and it looks like a water pipe or some kind of a pipe from a piping system. And
they had a whole row of them they found in China a while back as well.
A bunch of them. And now we're talking about pipes that are 150,000 years old. What does that say about mankind on this planet now? Look, it's been my theory for a long time, guys, that mankind has evolved on this planet for a lot longer than we've been given credit or even given knowledge of. And we've evolved several times. Maybe when an ice age comes, we have to kind of live a certain way until the ice age goes away. Because the planet goes through this climate change over and over and over. It's a cycle, it just keeps happening. I don't think that we cause global warming.
Absolutely.
In fact, I saw a video a couple nights ago which made me crack up. Check this out. It was about what's his face? Al Gore. Al Gore, exactly. It was a video with Al Gore where he was saying 7 years ago that in 2014 the ice caps are going to melt and we're all going to be underwater. It's 2014.
Well,
there's more ice than there was before.
I have no qualms. I have no qualms personally taking partial credit for global warming. I have no problem saying, yes, my contribution has definitely been average for the last 40-something years. I've definitely been working hard at warming the planet, and I probably will till the day I die, and so will the rest of humanity. But you're right in that there are cyclic occurrences of ice ages and warm spots, and that we extend so much further back because there's like Barbara Ann Clow wrote in her classic book, Catastrophobia. We are a species with a catastrophobia, a phobia of catastrophe. We don't like to discuss catastrophes. The idea that we can get wiped out in an instant by either a mega mega
Well, I don't know if I agree with
volcano, a
that.
tsunami, or an asteroid strike that hits us and decimates us. We have a calamity that's on such a large scale that the only people who are left are people who are, say, uncontacted tribes in the Amazon. These are the only people that manage to survive. This is obviously a pretty extreme postulation, but I think it's quite possible, considering the time frame that we're discussing. If there's a 150,000-year-old pipe system that they've found now in China, say, okay, or this pyramid in Gunung Padang, I think is how you pronounce it, that Graham Hancock
You're asking the wrong person for pronunciation advice.
Yeah, I think it's Gunung Padang, and it's in
good enough for me.
I believe it's in Thailand. It's in Indonesia. Excuse me. That's Thailand, right? Is Indonesia Thailand?
Close enough.
Sounds right.
It's pretty close, yeah. They have a pyramid there that they think goes back to about 22,000 BC, perhaps. If their dating winds up being confirmed, and this is another one of these oldest structures now on the planet that they're thinking. And there's been a lot of postulation about that part of the world seeing hundreds of square miles of land, if not thousands of square miles of land, disappear at the end of the last ice age.
Yep.
So that so much of what they may have constructed is now under the ocean. It's under the waves.
Yeah.
So we're not going to see it. You look at Nan Madol in the South Pacific.
Like I said, I'm waiting for Antarctica to get...
right. That's great. Yeah, absolutely. Antarctica is a perfect example. It's quite feasible that that's a landmass that at one time, I mean, haven't they discovered forests, petrified forests in Antarctica? I could swear that they found, like, fields of petrified tree stumps in Antarctica.
Well, I don't know about Antarctica, but check this out. It says here in a mysterious pyramid in China. That's where they found these pipes in a pyramid. So let's keep that into perspective here. It was near a pyramid.
It was in a pyramid. Okay.
Right.
So
it says China's Qinghai province. It says here near Mount Bangong. That's what it says here. Are these caves filled with these pipes leading to a nearby saltwater lake? So these are definitely, from the looks of it, they're water pipes.
Right. Wow.
These folks had water pipes. I mean, they had running water.
And they're iron pipes.
The iron pipes, which would last 150,000 to 200,000 years.
They're not even clay. They're like iron, smelted iron.
These people were creating pipes with iron, folks. Okay?
That's incredible.
Technology beyond what we give them credit for. And this is, and going back to my statement earlier that we've evolved several times, and I believe this wholeheartedly. A lot of the lore, like Atlantis, for example. Atlantis could have been somewhere like in Africa, could have been Atlantis for all we know, or somewhere in the Middle East for all we know. After the evolution of the planet and things happen, ice age come and goes.
It actually reminds me of your comment about all the Roswells around the world, the Chinese Roswell and now we have the African Atlantis and Atlantis in America. I actually published an article in my book that we're discussing sort of. Atlantis in America, and because I'm fascinated with the idea that he meant Central America and northern South America, even North America. I mean, you look at all of the ancient dwellings, Poverty Point, Louisiana. It's just like nearly between a quarter and a half mile in size. This huge amphitheater-sized structure, or amphitheater-shaped structure that's. It's a mound, but I think we were discussing this the other day on the other program. Mm-hmm. These mounds seem like, it's really low tech, but in actuality, it's not just piling on baskets of mud. It's piling on baskets of mud on top of clay, on top of pebbles, on top of grass, each layered so that it's specifically engineered to allow water to seep through it and not erode away the mound, so it does last for a few thousand years. So we're still watching them. We're still walking over them and having to, move them to put our highways through and our golf courses and whatever else we have to do to destroy them to put our civilization down today. These structures, maybe that's what he meant when he was talking about Atlantis, that it disappeared, because Cuba and the Bahamas, and that's another region that lost a lot of land at the end of the last ice age.
Correct, yeah.
I mean, I'm not saying that is what Atlantis was. I just have always been partial to that theory. I think it's really
honestly, I would not doubt it. And it's not because I'm Cuban, but I would not doubt that Atlantis was somewhere near Cuba.
Well, you look at all of the stories that the conquistadors brought back. The initial contacts where they ran into seagoing canoes that were, they labeled them rafts, and they were really like looking down on them. But in actuality, these rafts were a lot better made than the caravels that the conquistadors arrived in, seasick and scurvy-ridden. And these people had built these very intricate, very highly, technologically designed rafts that allowed the water to just flow through them and not swamp them and not sink them. And they used these, instead of the keels, they used, I forget what they're called. They're large flat stones that they would slide in and out of the raft at different points to use as a keel instead of the actual firm keel that they build into a ship today, or that the Spaniards were doing, which allowed the ship to roll a lot more and make them all seasick and stuff. Well, these boats that the Indians were cruising around miles from land. I mean, they couldn't see land. The first Indians that the conquistadors ran into, I think who invaded Peru? Not Cortez. God, I can't believe I'm blanking on this. How embarrassing.
And you're the editor.
I know. It's really embarrassing. We're going to have to come back to this. But those Spanish, or when they first ran into Indians, it was offshore, out in the water, and they killed most of them and kept a few of them captive to use as interpreters when they actually made landfall. Pizarro? Is Pizarro who conquered Peru?
I believe so, yeah.
It's really embarrassing. I should know this. It's one of my favorite topics. I'm really embarrassed.
Well, here's the question, though. I mean, let's
it's
go back to
lack of sleep syndrome. Excuse me. Go ahead.
Yeah, you're having the same problem that Alan's having, lack of sleep syndrome. But no, let's go back to what we were talking about here a couple minutes ago about the the amount of evidence that might be mounting that Atlantis was somewhere, very real and somewhere near a place like Cuba or a place maybe like Africa or something like that. Right. I mean, I'm pretty sure you've heard of all the stuff they found under the ocean by Cuba.
Oh yeah, I have actually. That's something that's very interesting.
Not to mention, hold on.
There's no real proof of it. There's just been assertions that we've found stuff.
Well, don't forget, you also have to understand there's been a lot of USOs more around Cuba and those waters than any other part of the world.
Right. That's a good point, actually. There have been a lot of stories about unidentified underwater objects, right?
Well, I have seen videos. I have seen videos of people, doing research around the Cuban. You can't go too close to Cuba because of the space. They'll shoot you literally. But if you get permission, actually go diving on there. I've seen diving videos where you can see structures and all kinds of things in the videos, which is incredible.
Oh, really? Oh, I would like to see those. I'm always fascinated at anything like that.
He can send you links. He always can send you links.
Yeah, send me some links, please. I'd love to see that, for sure. Well, who was it? Andrew Collins? He wrote one of his books, it might have been Ashes of Angels. I don't think it was Ashes of Angels. I think it was the one he wrote after that. He discusses offshore Cuba and diving in the caves off Cuba in his search for Atlantis, and talks about, finding some really interesting ruins and evidence of ancient structures there. I haven't seen too much evidence of it, but like I said, I would love to see these links.
I'll send you some.
It kind of reminds me of the UFO in the Black Sea. I've seen a lot of sonar image of it, but I've not seen a film of it yet.
Well, yeah, that's another mystery there, because, I mean, they made a big hoopla on that. I mean, that was everywhere, from Huffington Post,
Actually,
CNN.
I've seen some rock piles. They've shown us some rock piles.
Well, the initial sonar looked like the Millennium Falcon was.
It looked really neat.
I was just like, wow. Let me ask you: anybody see that shelf just off of DC? Not DC. Off of Los Angeles.
No.
Off of LA.
The what? the one that looks like a big, like underground carport with the big columns?
Yeah.
Yeah, I saw something recently that was debunking that. I wish I could remember what I was reading. I just saw it last week. Somebody was, I wonder if it was Alejandro. Congratulations on getting him on your show, by the way. That's a coup.
It's an awesome coup.
Like
he's awesome.
Stuff. Yeah, definitely. I could swear it was on Open Minds that I was reading something that was debunking that underwater shelf. I know exactly what you're talking about. It looks really cool in the underwater photography, the sonar imagery. It's another one of these cases of sonar imagery making it look really dramatic, But apparently it's not quite. But I mean, this is just one person naysaying it. For all I know, he could be wrong, too. It could very well be an underground base. I don't know. That's the whole theme of my book. I don't have any say one way or the other if any of the articles I published in that book are true. I don't know if they're
world
true.
is really explored.
That's the ironic thing, isn't it?
What'd you say, Alan?
What percentage of this world is really, truly explored?
Right. How many times do we hear that they found the oldest structure, the oldest ruins, the oldest Bible, the oldest
almost
scroll,
on a monthly basis?
I don't know what day of the week is it.
Yeah, right. Right on. So
I mean, look at these pipes, 150,000-year-old pipes, and this is just out recently. I mean, like when you find stuff like that, that tells you that we're a little blind to our real history on this planet, folks. Not everything you know it to be fact is fact. That's why I don't get so bent out of shape when I hear stuff like, "Oh, there's never going to be disclosure. They're never going to tell us." Well, we don't know about our history. You really think we're going to find out about aliens or anything else that they might be keeping secret? First, let's learn about our real history, because I have a feeling, and follow along here, guys. I have a sneaking suspicion that the big secret is that we are the aliens all along. That many,
I lean that direction myself.
Many thousands of years ago, mankind was on this planet. We had technology. The Ice Age was coming. People were like, we got to get the heck out of Dodge because it's going to get bad. And, a lot of us had some kind of technology, and they left the planet. Came back, wait a second, Ice Age is gone. This settled. And, that's,
I love that, the Battlestar Galactica idea that,
it is,
out there somewhere.
Which one,
mankind,
the old series or the new
series? The old series, they're looking for the root of the base planet of humanity. I don't know if they did that in the new series. I don't know if they did that in the remake series. But in the original series, that was the whole premise of the show.
Yeah.
That they were seeking the home planet of humanity, the fabled home world, Earth, I just think that's a really fascinating idea.
Well, I thought Earth was
the home base.
I thought Earth was one of the lost tribes. That was the whole thing to me.
Well, that could be the actual. I thought it was the home world, but you might be right. Actually, maybe it's the lost tribe. That makes sense too. But yeah, it's the same idea though. There's this it's spreading out of humanity across the galaxy. Or even further. Wow, wouldn't that be cool? Because that's what I like. When I think about UFOs, and I find myself late at night listening to one radio program or another because I'm constantly fishing for new information. I come up with my own personal theories and ideas of what UFOs could be, and what these ancient sightings and ancient reports could be, and what modern reports. I really sometimes find myself leaning towards the whole time travel thing. What if it is people from our future coming back to check up on us, or just sightseeing? Who knows?
It's possible. And here's the thing. I'm not one that follows or believes in time travel per se. I'm a little skeptical on time traveling to the past. I think time traveling to the future is very possible. I think even Einstein's theory of relativity kind of gives you a blueprint on how to do it. It tells you pretty much how it could be done. Now, here's the thing, though. Time traveling to the past, still not sold on that idea. But if anything is more possible, what would be more possible? Time travelers from our future that discovered a way to go back in time and travel into this time, or maybe learn to travel interdimensionally or something like that, or a galaxy maybe 20, 30 light years away, 2 light years away, a light year away, actually has a race on it that discovered technology and discovered propulsion and discovered warp drives, discovered wormholes, and they ended up coming to this little corner of the galaxy.
Yeah, this
tiny little speck.
planet, right.
Right.
Exactly.
Why this planet? out of all the planets? You know,
That
baffles me.
Exactly.
That's the great question in ufology. Why this planet in particular?
Right. Very good point.
I'm telling you, the Goldilocks zone, or it's the minimal resources that we have, something.
Yeah.
Well,
yeah. I think I like that Goldilocks zone actually idea, because that's what we're doing, right? Isn't that how we're looking for
well, that's what
planets?
we're looking for. Doesn't mean we're going to be able to get there.
But we're finding
that is what we're using as a criterion for white planets.
We're finding.
We're searching.
We found already hundreds and hundreds of planets in the Goldilocks zone.
Right.
Within our own, Milky Way, within our observable part of the galaxy. So, I mean, just the fact that we're finding hundreds of them out there, that means it's pretty common. So, again, why this little planet? Why so many? 258 reported UFO cases last month.
Yeah, I heard you say that. That's really interesting. That's crazy. Seems like a pretty good number to me.
It does.
Seems like a pretty high number.
And we're now in alert level 5, by the way. We're doing pretty good. It's not too bad. We're on alert level 5.
Oh yeah, that's interesting that they have an actual threat level.
Isn't that funny?
Is it a threat? Is it a threat level, or is it just like an alert level?
I think alert level 1. Alert level 1 comes with like the caption, "Oh snap, it's hit the fan." And of course, we're talking about the ancient pipes found in China, 150,000-year-old pipes in China. That is bananas, man. Bananas times 3. 150,000-year-old pipes. But now here's another story that really boggles the mind, Preston, and it's something that Alan over here brought up during break. Alan, you want to ask him about that one object that boggles the mind? I'm wondering
if you have any thoughts, comments, or views on the Black Knight and how long that's been around and what that's possibly.
I'm fascinated with the Black Knight. I first time I heard of it, my ears perked right up. I was just watching some documentary, I think it was Unexplained NASA Files, is that the name of the show? And they had a segment on the Black Knight, and they tried to blow it off, the really cool series of pictures that looks like a jet plane or super,
people are saying it's space junk, and I don't buy that.
Space junk, it's a blanket. I'm not buying that. The story's been around plenty of time, much longer than actual space flight. We've been hearing about this satellite over the poles and in a weird orbit around the planet, and I think it's entirely feasible that there's something up there hovering around watching us. I mean, I'm not going to say 100% it's there, but I think the evidence seems to be pretty lean in that direction. For sure.
My thing is, why haven't we shot this thing down, or why haven't we gone and observed it up close?
I wonder that about so many UFO sightings. Why don't the powers that be send up aircraft to investigate these sightings more often?
Well, someone told me there was a shuttle mission. I've heard that there was a shuttle mission to it.
Really?
Okay.
I haven't heard that yet.
No. That does not even ring a bell, that story.
Yeah, I'm not hearing this.
Hang on, I'll see what I can do to find that.
I would like to know more. Because that is something that occurs to me all the time. How often do they investigate these things? Because just because I haven't heard that they have investigated or not doesn't mean they haven't. I don't know most of the things that my military is involved in. The covert budgets are so astronomical. I mean, where do we think those missing trillions from the Pentagon are going? They're not going into everybody's pocket entirely. A lot of that's going to fund covert operations and black.
What was that great line in the movie Independence Day? The father, Jeff Goldblum's father, had. It was like, "What? You don't really think they spend X amount on toilet bowls, do you?"
Right, absolutely. $700-800 on a nut and bolt.
Yeah, exactly.
By the way, I'm doing the research here. I'm showing Space Shuttle mission STS-88 might have been the one that actually got up close to the Black Knight.
Nice. When he says he's doing his research, that means he's on Google.
What did they
Google's.
decide?
I'm sorry?
What did they decide?
Well, it's NASA. They're not going to tell you anything.
Yeah, never a straight answer.
They didn't disclose, huh?
Nope.
Never a straight answer. That's what NASA stands for.
Well, I'm leaning towards it being a real phenomenon, that there really is something up there, that it's quite possible that there have been, or at least has been, a mission where they have specifically said to somebody, okay, it's time for you to go and film the Black Knight thing that's out there, and they closed in on it using radar, because don't they track asteroids and other space junk floating around that might
You would hope so.
Why wouldn't they be able to track this mysterious satellite? I mean, it can't just, unless it really is appearing and disappearing from radar. I mean, maybe it is that mysterious. Maybe we can't track it. Maybe it is an alien spaceship. I mean,
but here's the thing. But they got pictures of it, though. If there's pictures of it, and from my understanding, even like amateurs have been able to capture this thing in space.
Absolutely.
So it's not only NASA's been able to photograph this thing, amateurs have been able to do it as well. So if that's there, you're able to capture it on video and film. Why can't you get close to it with some kind of a shuttle or some kind of a vehicle and inspect it? Jump on top of this thing and inspect it. I mean, look, it's not that far off where they can't have like a spacewalk and get on this thing and look at it, unless it has some kind of a magnetic field that destroys the ship so they get close to it or something like that. Which at that point, that'd be crazy. That'd be the scariest thing possible if you think about it, because we won't be able to find out what it is, and it's just sitting there.
Yeah.
Kind of creepy. Now, the first reports of the Black Knight, I could be wrong, but it was what, like 1960? Was it, Preston?
No, it was Nikola Tesla. They were talking about getting little green man signals. I think that's what they were calling them. Is that what it is? I believe so. He was talking about picking up weird radio signals from space, and he was the first one to say that there was possibly this satellite, going around the planet. There must be somebody up there. And he was picking up transmissions, but there was no evidence beyond his assertions, as far as I know.
Right.
Well, there was that. Then in the 1920s, ham radio people started getting some weird feedback and things like that. So they were hearing it also during World War II. And World War I. They've also had incidents of transmission issues, and I guess it's
not all background radiation. They're not all picking up background radiation from the Big Bang. There's other things going on up there for sure.
Well,
but I haven't really done any writing about the Black Knight, so I couldn't say much more than you guys could say about it. Other than it's a fascinating topic to me.
It is. It's a very fascinating topic. Could you imagine if one day we do step on top of this thing and we figure out that we put this up there, about 150,000 years ago?
Well, that would be pretty cool. I want to know who put the monument on Phobos.
Ah, the Phobos. Yeah, I saw that.
Yeah, you see that.
I think that's a fascinating photograph, and that Buzz Aldrin, I believe, even mentioned it on C-SPAN. Now, granted, he didn't say aliens put it there, but he did specifically mention that should be something that we should talk to say to the public. Look at what we found. We found a monolith on Phobos.
Was that also the time that he talked about we'd like to go back to Mars again?
That was when he was talking about Mars. Yeah, he wanted Mars, and the way to get the public interested was to talk about this monolith on Phobos. And once people find out about this monolith, they're going to be very excited, and they're going to want to back mission to Mars. Yeah, that was his idea. Tell them about this thing, and for sure, if you look it up on Google, it's a fascinating. I mean, where did it come from?
It's a tower of some kind. It's
huge. It's standing upright.
Yeah.
There's nothing around it.
Nature doesn't do that, folks.
They don't stand stones up in a dry, airless environment. I mean, it seems pretty mysterious to me. I mean, it could be completely 100% natural. It could be an asteroid that landed very gently. But I just don't think so,
An asteroid that creates that kind of a shadow.
Yeah, right.
Yeah,
doesn't seem very feasible to me. And of course the alternative is pretty out there. The idea that maybe some civilization actually did put. Granted, why would they? But then there's the whole idea that Phobos itself is artificial. Wouldn't that be cool to land on Phobos one day and find out that indeed it is hollow, and that indeed it was
a space station of some kind?
A space station. That would be absolutely phenomenal. I would be so excited.
Well,
Absolutely.
a lot of people think also, Preston, that the moon, our moon, is a space station, and that
Right,
that
right.
it's hollow as well.
Right.
Which, look, if you're going to observe a planet's evolution over the course of I don't know, billions of years, you might want to put a space station somewhere like really close to the planet, like say on
Right.
the moon,
Right.
perhaps.
Possibly.
Yeah, it's a possibility that maybe the moon is a space station of some sort.
I wouldn't be surprised
wouldn't be shocked.
there's actually something on the moon. I don't know if
Yeah.
I'd go so far as to put much credence into the entire moon being a space station.
No, I think there might be
an
several
awful
stations.
waste of effort,
Yeah.
But actually somebody being on the moon, there's enough weird pictures of things on the moon to make me think, wow.
Oh, no kidding. Are you familiar with the Mona Lisa UFO?
I'm not sure.
The Mona Lisa alien that supposedly they found on the moon of one of the Apollo missions.
I don't believe so. No, I don't know what you're talking about.
Oh, you got so much more research to do, my friend.
Yeah.
This is from I think it was Apollo 20. It's one of the secret missions that is like off the books. There's a video that surfaced a few years ago, and it shows even an astronaut in the video playing with the camera, panning around in the actual control room on the shuttle, and it pans over to what looks like a body of some sort of a humanoid being, female being. And the story goes they found this being on the moon, and guess what?
I know what you're talking about.
She looks
I know
Native
exactly
American.
what- Yes, I know exactly what you're talking about. I don't know how much credence I put into that. I just don't know. I'm such, like I said, I will not, I refuse to say I believe this story or I disbelieve this story, but I'm so hard to convince at the same time of the validity of so many stories. I hear so many people. There's one person that I'm just having the worst time actually giving any credence to, and I wasn't going to do this. Clifford Stone. He's just the one guy I'm having so much trouble putting any credence to. I listened to him tell me that there's 57. I heard it. That's why I'm thinking about Clifford, because I heard it in your radio promo at the beginning
Oh, the
of the
57
show.
alien species.
Yeah, the 57 alien species, and I just can't get into his story. But then I listen to other people tell their stories, and I'm right away totally believing them. They just seem to me to be legit. I'm a very hard person to convince, while at the same time not wanting to put 100%, okay, this is definitely the fact. Because I know that so many people do make stuff up. Wow, that was close. They make stuff up, right?
Quick save. I was the one who goofed up earlier.
Yeah, he dropped the F-bomb earlier. No, but, speaking of making stuff up, and, that's another black eye in ufology.
Right.
The amount of hoaxers, let's get over the obvious ones, Van Daniken, Zachariah Sitchin. The obvious guys who've built a career over at Billy Myers. But, besides these charlatans, there's a whole lot of other people that create videos for YouTube just for the hell of it.
Absolutely.
Just because it's fun. And they can do it now. It's so easy. This is
and
what
then
really
they get
kills me.
invited on these lecture circuits.
Yeah.
And I'm dumbfounded.
This is what kills me. It kills me, Preston, that so many people go out of their way to do this just to, hop into the field of ufology so they can feel like, oh, we're a part of ufology. We're a part of it. We're doing the lectures now. We're doing the tours. We're on radio, we're on podcasts, on the internet.
It detracts from real research that's going on, and I really wonder how much of it is psyops, operations, stuff that's designed to make us distracted from the legitimate research that goes on. Richard Dolan, you guys mentioned him earlier. I too am a fan of Richard's. I think that his work should be much more mainstream. It's fascinating.
I agree. Yeah.
And because there's so many loop jobs out there and obvious hoaxers and just simply deluded people too, but
yes,
I'm mainly addressing the willful hoaxers. How many of these people are actually paid sock puppets so that the mainstream can point to the giggle factor and brush aside the legitimate research that goes on, so that the military that does know what's going on can rest a little more easy. Do you know what I mean? Because it makes it harder for people to pay attention to the legitimate stuff.
And I'll go a step further. I'll even say that they don't even have to pay people anymore to do some of this stuff. People enjoy
You're
it just
right.
for the notoriety. I
Right.
mean, let's take a look at a very famous person in ufology who is in a lot of hot water right now, Stan Romanek.
Yes, I was just
Okay.
thinking him, actually. Yes, absolutely.
This is a guy who came forward saying, "Oh, I have this fascinating video of an alien in the window. It's an amazing video. When you guys see this, it's going to blow the
can't
cover off
stand
of the
that
entire
video.
thing." And it is one of the hokiest videos I've ever seen. It's
Yeah,
clearly
terrible.
a fake. Terrible acting in Stan's part. I've interviewed Stan. He's a nice enough fellow when you talk to him in person, but how many hoaxers are not nice people?
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Doesn't make him not a nice person, right?
Yeah, how many liars are not nice people when you're
Right.
trying to get a lie across? You're going to be nice to people, right?
Right.
Look, Alejandro knows Stan. He did a documentary, the extraordinary, the Stan Romanek story, which came out recently, and he's in that video talking about Stan's case. And I laugh. I saw it recently, and I laughed really hard when they get to that one part in the documentary, and everybody's like, "Well, Stan seems like such a normal person. His family and him, they seem so normal, so nice." So if they're just normal
Surprise,
folks, why are aliens bugging them so much?
Yeah.
Right?
Oh, he's
That's a
just
good
asking
point.
for it. Didn't you know? He's just asking for it.
That's a good point.
That whole thing, look, the whole Stan Romanek case is mind-boggling that it got as big as it did. But now look what happened to the guy. Now he's charged with pedophilia. He's going through his
That's
trial.
terrible. Yeah.
I mean, the worst crime imaginable is what he's charged with. All right, let's face the
Terrible.
facts here. This is the worst thing you could do is to harm a child, to molest a child, to be involved with any kind of pedophilia. There's nothing more disgusting than that. If this is
it's really
proven true,
sad.
and I pray for ufology, not even for Stan's sake, but for ufology itself, I pray that it's proven to be fake and that he's innocent and that all charges are dropped and he proves that it was all alien conspiracies and he proves that he was 100% honest about everything. Because I would hate to think that a person that we put so much stock into in the field of ufology, and we've given so much airtime, and we've let him get on our shows, do the TV stuff, to get the documentaries out, to think that this person the whole time was, looking at kiddie porn or molesting children or whatever he was doing on the side, while he was promoting all that stuff and interacting with everybody in the field of ufology. That's sort of disturbing to me. I mean, that's very
Yes.
disturbing, because you look at this
Absolutely.
one guy, and then who's not to say that there's not an X amount of numbers of people just like him in the field of ufology,
Right.
which makes you again look at everybody in the field a little bit cross-eyed, because now you're like
Askance.
you don't
Right.
know who is real and who's fake and who's a pedophile and who's a sicko. And
Absolutely.
look, in the entertainment business, there is a whole thing with pedophilia that's been coming forward in the last 10 years. It's not anything new. The pedophile rings are out there. Could ufology have one also, a little pedophile cult of these people who are all hoaxers and they all do it just so they can get in contact with each other and share
Because
pornography?
I think there's a lot of hoaxing going on.
Oh, no, there's definitely a lot of hoaxing going on.
I don't
But
have any doubt about it.
But how much of it is related to what Stan is caught up in? That's my
That's
question.
scary. That's a scary thought. That is.
It is.
Well, we'll never have all the details, I'm sure.
Yeah. Yeah, probably not.
I would hope so. I would hope that one day we do have all the gory details and we find out who all these culprits are, behind the scenes. Because look, if he was caught supposedly sharing documents and stuff like that, and if this is the case, that means there are other people that he's sharing documents with, right?
Right. Mm-hmm.
Who are these other people?
Right.
My question is bigger than him getting arrested. Is why haven't other people been arrested?
True. Well, maybe he's not connected to other people. Maybe it is just a little thing with him and his family. Because I think the only other person that we know is his wife, or that has been alleged to know anything, is his wife, right?
Right. Yeah, Lisa. Which, by the way, she's done a great job of PR, just continuing the ball rolling on the whole Stan Romanek case, and it's like nothing ever happened. If you look at her Facebook or whatever, it's like nothing happened. Everything's still
Right.
cool.
Right.
We're still promoting the documentary, the books. By the way, donate some money because we're broke. I mean, that's pretty much what you see now on her page.
Right.
But look, if I was involved with a family member who was accused of pedophilia, believe me, the last thing you're going to see me do is post stuff on Facebook about funny icons or funny news from the news or anything that's controversial in nature. I might shut everything down and focus on my family member and see what went wrong there, and worry about that, not worry about ufology. because
it makes for a very depressing situation in the whole UFO field. How do we get attention back on UFOs and not on the pedophile?
Yeah, and unfortunately, he's not the only person who's ever been accused of this stuff. That was even a gag in the X-Files movie. Remember that, where I think it was Martin Landau was his name, one of the characters in the movie. He was accused of pedophilia, and he's like, "Oh, what is it, the kiddie porn again?" I mean, it's kind of like the running joke also in ufology, so you got to keep that in mind as well. This is where I'm kind of 50-50, and I'm hoping that it's fake. I'm hoping that he's innocent.
Yeah, well,
hoping amongst hope.
We have to wait and see. I'm not gonna judge anybody at this point.
No, we got to give him his due process and let him go through his trial and prove that he's innocent if he is innocent. You know what I mean? And that's good. Like, if he is found guilty and all the evidence comes out and it's really, really gory, that cannot be good for the entire state of ufology. I think we have to evaluate who we put out there a little bit better in the future.
Just have a little bit of detachment,
Yeah, a little bit too much. I don't know, the Stan Romanek case really, it depresses me. It really does. Depresses the hell out of me.
Yeah, but here's as you said earlier, if there's no one else that they're going after in the community to arrest, it sounds a little like a plant.
Interesting.
They're not seriously. They're obviously he's not cooperating with the law enforcement because he's got no information. He can't roll over on someone else.
We don't know if he's cooperated or not yet. I mean, there's been no news has come out since the arrest. It's been very quiet. So who knows if he's snitching on people and talking? I mean, we have no idea until this thing becomes a trial, if it ever goes to trial. I mean, this could end up like the R. Kelly debacle.
Yeah, right.
What happened
you throw enough money. Yeah, you know what happened? You throw enough money at it goes away.
Exactly. Now, I don't know if Stan has that kind of money. Maybe.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I don't think Stan has that kind of money to throw much money at this. I don't think he's going to be able to throw money until it goes away, unfortunately for him. But
how do you feel? I mean, do you feel? Because I don't know if you've seen all the evidence, but do you feel that maybe Stan at first was really experiencing some kind of alien connection, abduction, or scenario, and then he kind of fabricated a lot of stuff later on? Or you think it was all fake from the beginning, or? What are your thoughts on that, Preston?
Personally, I like I said, I don't really want to judge anybody, but I've always been kind of leery. There's some people that strike me as really shady. Stan Romanek is one of them. That video, as soon as I saw that video of the bobbing head in the window, I've never been able to put any stock into anything Stan Romanek says whatsoever. And there's other people like that around in the field that I just can't put any stock into whatsoever. And then there's others who I watch tell their story who I don't have any problem believing for 1 second. Those old women with their little kid in Texas years ago when I was a kid that had the UFO fly over, escorted by all the helicopters, and they came down with all the radiation sickness. I'm 99% sure that was some kind of military operation. It was probably a military craft that flew over their car. But it was something very real. I believe those people when they tell their story. I see the evidence on their hands, their swelling and their sores and the sickness. And I've seen doctors' reports. They got very sick. I've seen the kid now grown up. He's in his 40s now. I think he's my age, and he's very sincere. He just wants answers. He wants the military to come out and tell him what happened. I believe him every step of the way. Yeah, and then there's people that are there are some that I don't know what to think. Who was the guy from Area 50? Bob Lazar. That guy seems so believable. I hate this. I might be being taken for a ride, but I so badly want to believe him because he just tells a really good story. He really does. He might be a complete flim-flam artist, but darn it, he spins a great yarn. If he's making that up, he's right there with Daniel Webster. I mean, he's a storyteller extraordinaire.
Stan Friedman does not believe Bob Lazar's story.
Really, he doesn't. Now, I like Stan Friedman. I do like Friedman. I think he's a researcher that
Yep.
does pretty good work. I don't think he's taken for a ride very often. I
by
think
the way,
everybody is sometimes. But
by the way, shout outs to Stan Freeman, who's been a little bit under the weather. He's
been having heart trouble, right?
Yeah, he had a heart attack, I believe, recently, and he's doing a little bit better. So our prayers are with him. Hopefully, he gets full recovery.
Yeah.
So, he's a great researcher, and the Mirage Man movie that came out pinpointed some stuff that even he was duped in. A lot of it is conspiracy junk. A lot of it is.
But that whole
hoaxing.
Majestic 12, I hate seeing that Majestic 12 gets such attention as a real organization when
It was all fake.
it might be.
Yeah.
There might be an organization like that out there, but that whole thing, that whole sheaf of papers and film, and that's all the hoax.
Yep.
That's all like made up stuff. But I see it regurgitated on these UFO sci-fi shows now. What was the last one I was just watching?
I don't know what day of the week were you watching it.
Yeah, exactly. There's so many now. But it was just they share the room full of suits around a table, and they're talking about Majestic 12 and the various big names that were on the panel or in the organization, and I'm like, no, this is not real. This is fabricated. This is fiction.
Yep.
But that doesn't mean that there isn't an organization up there. You look at the documents that Richard Dolman has prized out of the military. There's obviously people on some of these military bases that were being reported to the UFO officer on the military base. If if you have a UFO report, you go to the UFO officer. Well, who is that guy reporting to?
By the way, that was on an episode of UFO Hunters.
Which was
they dug up the highway.
Right. Oh, right. Okay.
And of course, I think they don't get the credit they deserve, but that show really was. I think the cusp or the
UFO
broke
Hunter?
the veil. Yeah, that show really.
Yeah, that was a good show.
That was the show that really broke through and made made it possible for History Channel and those kind of channels to really expand on this subject and put these kind of shows on the air.
And they did a really good job on that show.
Yeah, they did.
I think they kept it from being overly sensationalistic very well.
Yep.
Great job.
You're dealing with real researchers also. Bill Burns is a hell of a real researcher. I know that for a fact. I produce the guy's show on Monday nights.
Right on.
So yes, working with him alone will tell you, that he knows what he's talking about just by listening. It's funny because we get into conversation sometimes, Preston, and I just I tune out, I completely just mute myself and I just sit there and listen. I don't even want to say anything. I just want to hear the information because it's so much information that this man has.
That's great.
And legit researcher, and again, that's the show that really made it possible for a lot of the shows like Ancient Aliens and all these other shows that are out now.
Absolutely.
That are so popular now. Even Crazy Hair Giorgio Tsoukalos has his own show now.
I saw that. I saw that he has a new show where he's going around the world looking up mysteries, not just UFO related. I think they're
no. It's all aliens. It's all UFO.
Is it all aliens?
Come on, it's Giorgio.
It's aliens, yeah. I wasn't thinking. Sorry, lack of sleep syndrome.
It happens.
If it's Giorgio Tsoukalos involved, there's going to be aliens and crazy
aliens.
I'd love to interview him just to ask him, a couple questions on his knowledge on ufology, because he knows Eric Van Daniken's stuff really well. If you listen to him talking, and he can recite Eric Van Daniken's work like it's verbatim. But I've also heard him on other shows, like Joe Rogan had him on his show not long ago, and he started asking him some random questions about Roswell, and he was like, I have no idea. And I mean,
really?
It was it was stuff really easy stuff.
Interesting.
Which really baffled me because I was like, this guy who's gotten so much attention can't answer simple questions about Roswell.
That's
stuff
really
that
interesting.
Your average person would know. If you're semi-interested in the UFO phenomenon, what's the first case that normally everybody talks about?
Right.
Roswell. Right. Before Roswell, Kenneth Arnold.
Yahtzee.
Betty
and Barney Hill. But really, Roswell is the cream of the crop. That's the case.
Yeah. That is Rendlesham, I think.
Which, by the way, there's a conference coming up in Rendlesham.
Yeah, I heard you guys mention that.
They're going to shed some new light on
I was going to say, did I hear you saying something about new light? Yeah?
Yeah, it's off in the distance.
What are they possibly talking about now?
30 years later, you got me. I don't know. That was the question. Yeah.
I would like to know. Because it's possible, like I think Alan said, maybe they prized out some new documents or something, because didn't the British release all those documents a couple years ago?
Yeah, but what possible documents could they possibly release? Oh, a guy came forward saying he saw a light at the corner of his window.
Well, you didn't know about the radiation until tonight, did you?
I had heard about the radiation, but I didn't know it was that spread. I heard there was radiation on there, but I didn't
It's the
realize
first I've heard tonight that there was an actual British military report. Isn't that what you said, Alan? That there was a British military report talking about radiation? I didn't know that until just now, until tonight. So that's new for me. I would like to know more about that, actually, because I know a lot about the story. I actually had lunch with the guy who wrote Left at Eastgate when he was first publishing it years ago, back in, I guess, the end of 1999, maybe 2000, somewhere around that, maybe 1998 or 97 even, I don't know. Was it that long ago? It's a pretty long time ago now. I just remember having lunch with him, or brunch here in New York City.
Yeah,
and,
brunch.
So, I mean, I've been paying attention to that case for
never
years.
Had brunch.
I think it's fascinating that, is it Peniston that claims that he had the code in his head from touching the ship? I don't know how much credence to put in that, the binary code, but I still think it's fascinating. Peniston, Sergeant Peniston, isn't that his name? He reached out and he touched the craft, and he got that binary code in his mind, and somebody supposedly has now translated part of it into a language, into English. I don't know how do you translate binary code into English?
It came with subtitles.
Yeah.
It came with an instruction booklet.
I'm
Speaking of which, by the way, did you know they're rebooting the Greatest American Hero TV series?
Yes, I heard about that.
Yeah, I didn't know that. Wow.
Well, you know the plot line.
Takes me back.
Aliens give this guy a superhero costume. The problem is and all the superpowers are in the costume. The problem is that he loses the instruction book.
He loses the instructions. Yeah, I forgot about that. Wow.
I love that show growing up. In fact, William Catt was like a hero to me when I was a kid. Literally, was the greatest American hero. Too. Yeah. You know what's funny? They were saying on a report when they mentioned they were going to bring that show back or reboot it. They were like, back then we had William Catt. This time around, let's get Cat Williams. What do you think of that? Cat Williams is the greatest American hero. I'm down. I'll watch that.
That'll be interesting. That'd
be a heck of a twist, wouldn't it?
It would be, definitely.
That's another a great TV series that deals with aliens, and the media has helped a lot also in feeding this obsession with the whole UFO phenomenon for the last 70 years, and it really has started with Hollywood. Do you think a lot of the Hollywood movies and stuff that's come out has been like mandated by the government? Because I have that theory that the government got
that's
together.
That's really interesting. You mentioned that. I was thinking about that earlier tonight.
There's got to be some involvement.
I used to be friends with. Well, I am friends with Catherine Austin Fitz, and she was somebody who used to put a lot of stock into movies having to being like secret message carriers, that they would be telling us secret facts in the background, like insiders are writing these scripts and selling them to Hollywood, and they're getting official backing, and that's how these movies are made, and they're telling us things, and they're giving us subliminal messages and programming us basically. And there's other people who are trying to divulge information to the public through these movies, like Eyes Wide Shut would be a great example, that they're, divulging the secrets of secret societies to the public at large. And these are insiders that are giving us this information through fictional storytelling. I don't know how much stock to put into that or not. But sure, some of these scripts are obviously written by people who have experience in what they're writing about. That's how Ian Fleming wrote James Bond. He was a spy in World War II. He was in the OSS. He knew about spycraft, so he came up with a spy figure. So obviously some of these stories are probably written by people who have had some kind of experience in what they're talking about. But at the same time, are some of these movies really being financed intentionally to tell us these things, these secret stories like parables, without really telling us that they're telling us parables? They could be. I know that the ONDCP was planting anti-drug messages in mainstream television programming years ago. And I'm sure it's still ongoing and using taxpayer money to program us without telling us that we're paying for our programming. I mean, it's really scary stuff that they do to us. The Pentagon is involved in that stuff. So maybe they are putting films out that are secretly passing off messages to us, or leading us away from the truth. It could go either way, right?
Yeah, no, that's the best way to give misinformation.
Right.
Or just to confuse the field. Hey, let's give them some good aliens, some bad aliens, and a little bit in between. They don't know what the heck is going on.
To confuse the field, absolutely. I think it's much more effective to confuse it, to muddy it up, than it is to try to completely lead us astray.
Yeah. There's also a pattern. If you look at it, there's a pattern. Like every couple of decades, you'll get hostile aliens, and then you get a while where they're really nice aliens. Then you get another like decade or so where they're hostile, want to kill the planet. I mean, in the 70s and 80s, you had Close Encounters of the Third Kind, which
do you think they're friendly, or do you think aliens are friendly, or do you think they're aggressive?
I think it's a little bit of both. I think it's actually what the movies are telling you. You're going to have your hostile aliens. You're going to have your good aliens. You're going to have look, we have that here on Earth. You can go to any part of this country and you find nice people. You find a-holes. You're going to find that diversity here. Why not in space? Right?
I think they live.
They live. I saw that in the movie theater when that came out. Wow.
They should remake that movie.
How bad did that freak you out?
My brother and I went. Yeah, good movie.
That movie still freaks me out. You know, speaking of people in Hollywood who are connected to the inside, Jackie Gleason said years ago that he saw ETs, and that Nixon, of all people, showed him ETs.
Right. Now, would Jackie Gleason just say that to make up a story and pull our legs? It's possible, but at the same time, it seems like a really off-the-wall story to tell people, doesn't it?
Out of all the things, and of course, his catchphrase on the show... And his catchphrase on the show, of course, was like, "One day Alice, pal, zoom to the moon."
Right. So
ironic,
the interest, right? Interesting.
The guy was definitely interested in the whole space phenomenon. Preston, look, we're almost out of time. We're actually running short here. We only have a couple more minutes. I want to definitely give you a chance to promote your links, tell anybody where they can catch you. If you're going to be at a convention or anything, please divulge the information so people could follow your work, man. You're definitely a character that I think people should keep in touch with.
Right on. Thank you, Angel. Well, my book is Disinformation Guide to Ancient Aliens, Lost Civilizations, Astonishing Archaeology, and Hidden History. And contributors include Dan Hancock, David Childress, Michael Arbuthnot, Robert Schock, William Corliss, Michael Cremo, Colin Wilson, Van Doniken, and John Anthony West, among many, many others. I can be found on Facebook.com/Preston Peet, or WordPress.com/Preston Peet. Is that what it is? Or Preston Peet at WordPress? I don't know. If you Google my name, I'm really easy to find. That's usually what I tell people. Google Preston Peet, P-E-E-T. I'm all over the internet. I don't have any appearances coming up on conventions, but I'm always open to invitations. So if anybody out there wants to invite me, I'm free and easy.
What are your travels? Where are your travels going to take you in the near future? Because I know you're working probably on something. Are you editing another book? Are you researching anything at the moment?
I'm working on a couple of different projects at the moment, but things are kind of up in the air at the moment. I'm trying to figure out exactly what I do. I'm working on a project with another friend, another ancient cultures project, but it's in its first stages at the moment. But things change from day to day. I may have something completely new on the table tomorrow. I'm not sure. We'll see what tomorrow brings.
Juggling's not a bad thing.
No, Ken. I hope you listen to the show on October 29th. We're going to have a very interesting guest on. Michael Heiser is going to be on with us. He is the person who debunked Zecharia Sitchin, the entire Anunnaki theory. He debunked it.
I would like to hear him, definitely.
He's also part of the Ancient Aliens Debunked DVD or documentary. A lot of his work is what they're referencing in that documentary. In fact, he is in the documentary as well. He's going to be our guest on the show here, and really he's one of those guests that I've been wanting to get on the show for at least a couple of years now. Fascinating person. Just looking at what he put out there and researching it myself blew my mind away. I mean, it really did, because a lot of the stuff that he talked about was so on the money. When you do your own homework, that's the key here. Do your own research, do your own homework.
Right.
Don't take things at face value and just let somebody like Van Daniken or David Icke or one of these guys say,
because there is plenty of evidence. there is plenty of evidence for visitation, and there's plenty of things that point towards the idea that, okay, maybe there is something to these stories, but not all of those stories point to visitation.
Correct.
So you're right. It's good to be discerning, and that's what I always try to do with all of my work. I want my readers to read it for themselves. If the story that was given to me for my book was well researched and well argued and well cited, I was perfectly willing to publish it, whether I believe it or not, because I want my readers to make up their minds. I want them to do the research. You know, there's, like I said at the beginning of the show, there's 50 sides to every story, not just one or two. You know, so it's good to have as many viewpoints out there as possible, so that we can look at the things that are wrong and say, no, that's wrong, and know to look for those in the future. You know, if you use that as a source, we know that your research is pretty fallacious.
Exactly. Right? Exactly. So please, hopefully you're listening to that show. It should definitely be an interesting show with Michael.
I will.
Guys, we're all out of time. Preston, thank you so much again for being on the show here.
Yeah, absolutely. It's great talking to you.
Thank you, guys. Alan, good to meet you. Peace and love, guys. Have a good night.
Take care, Preston. Guys, that's been the great Preston Peet. Again, follow his work, and if you guys want to get to his links and you don't know exactly how to do it, you can't remember his name or whatever, go to skywatchersradio.com. The podcast will be there within 10 minutes after the show is over. We're all out of time, though. It's been fun. We'll be back next week. Good night, everybody.
Excellent.
Stay classy.
Very well could be somebody adjusting the brim of their hat in some odd way, or they're tucking their hair behind their ear, and we just can't see it from the angle that the photo is taken. You know, but yeah, that's very interesting. You know.
Now, being an editor of this book and collaborating with a lot of folks, I know, you know, off air we were talking about some of the folks that collaborated with you on here. Georgia Tukalus, one of our favorites from Ancient Aliens, as I like to call him, the hairdo.
Yeah, he gets a lot of commentary online about his hair.
The hairdo Tukalus.
About his man, was it you that said he had a whole meme industry?
Man, I'll tell you what, nobody in ufology has had more funny memes online than Giorgio Tukalus.
Nobody. I don't think anybody has.
And the punchline in every meme is always aliens.
Aliens. It's aliens. Yeah,
it's aliens. My favorite one is, and I'm sure everybody knows exactly the meme I'm talking about because you guys have seen it. If you've Googled Giorgio Tukalus, you've seen some of the memes. My favorite one is one that is, the typical pose. He's there with his two hands stretched out, or his hands are out like he's about to say something. And it says on the top, the caption says, "Dollar goes in, soda comes out," and the bottom says, "Must be aliens."
Yeah,
right?
It's a tight answer. Yeah, I have to admit my jaw hit the table when I first saw him explain his Atlantis theory on the Ancient Aliens television show, where he postulates that Atlantis was not a continent per se. It was actually a gigantic spaceship that lifted up out of the water and up into the clouds, I take it, even though it explicitly says in the myth or in the tale that it sank beneath the waves. He wants it to go up into the air. Okay, more power to you, my friend.
He completely lost me with the whole Puma Punku section of the whole Puma Punku video on Ancient Aliens. They kind of lost me on that. I mean, I'm sure you're familiar with Puma Punku, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I'm fascinated with the place. I think it is very fascinating, and that's another thing where that Ancient Aliens Debunked movie. Yeah. Very interesting take on it, and some of the stuff he had to say made sense, but the fact that Puma Punku is built at such an extremely high elevation, it is above the tree line. It is on the barren plateau as near as far as I know.
It is now, but we're talking about something that happened a long time ago.
Absolutely. You're right there.
Got to keep that into perspective.
There's postulation that the land there to to collect the work of some of my favorite writers in the field of lost civilizations, as well as ancient aliens and ancient mysteries. And for my publisher, Disinformation, who had published my first book, which was on a completely unrelated topic, but also fringe unaccepted at that time. Particularly, it's not quite as controversial now with all the pot legalization going on, but it was pretty controversial at the time. Let me tell you, I still remember people asking me, "Do you really think marijuana is going to be legal in our lifetime?" And me being hesitant to say yes. Answering like I wish, I hope, and I, optimistically, I certainly hope so, but I don't want to say for sure. So when I had the opportunity to put this book together, I leapt at the opportunity. That's really my background. I don't have any formal training in ufology, say, or even archaeology. I just have a vast appetite for knowledge, and I'm a voracious reader and have been since I was also a little kid. Reading was my very first addiction, and I've never tried to kick it, and I never will. I'm self-taught individual.
Now, what are some of the favorite, the stories that really caught your eye? The Nazca lines. What was the one story that when you were a kid you're like, damn, that's got to be real?
Oh God, when I was a kid, the Baalbek, the Chilathon, Baalbek, those three massive stones in the Sun Temple. I believe it's the Sun Temple. A lot of people say, oh, the Romans put that there. And as a matter of fact, in the Ancient Aliens Debunks, he ascribes it to Romans, and I disagree. I disagree heartily. And I want to say for the record that as much as I told you last time we spoke, the segment on the Renaissance paintings in that movie, I was fascinated by it, and as I mentioned to you, I really learned some stuff in that because I'm not classically trained in the arts. Classical painting, I don't know, diddly about that topic. So it was really nice to find out that indeed there are representations of what looked for all the world to me to be UFOs, and people even in the background pointing at them, and their dog looking at the UFO hovering in the background of the painting. But that's in so many scores of paintings apparently, and that was an actual representation of John the Baptist or Jesus or whatever they were representing with that specific symbol in the painting. And it wasn't such such an outlandish thing after all. But while I put a lot of credence into his theory on that, or it has risen, that lake wasn't always the way it was, that it was connected to the sea at one point, that there's evidence of harbors in that place, that there was actual water, I hesitate to say seafaring, but if it was connected to the ocean at some point, which is the theory I'm discussing, then it's quite possible that there were ships coming in and out of that place, say 10,000 years ago, 8,000 years ago, however many thousand, because there's, mainstream archaeology says, oh no, it's only 2,000 years old, 1,000 years old.
Right.
The Incas built it. Whereas other researchers, going back as far as Poznański, I believe is how you pronounce his name, Arthur Poznański, who in, the turn of the century, early 1900s, did a lot of measurements and came to the conclusion that it was the oldest city on the planet, basically. That he put it as old as archaeologists are saying that Göbekli Tepe is in Turkey these days, 12,000 years old to the end of the last ice age. Yeah, I believe Graham Hancock goes into some deep detail about it in Fingerprints of the Gods. But, then there's the idea, well, those stones might not be in their original place from when they were first set. If the ground moved, how does he know that he's measuring the correct measurements? That's one question that always came to my mind. If the ground rose or sank, it wouldn't.
Well, that and also the adjacent towns nearby they've looted that area. I mean, they've gone in there and taken all kinds of things.
They've gone in and gotten stone. Absolutely, They've taken a lot of stone away. Absolutely, just like they did at the Great Pyramid. They took a lot of those casings away. When the casing stones get damaged by an earthquake, it makes it a lot easier to just go and take stones. I mean, they've dismantled entire pyramids in Egypt, carted them away that we're just now finding out about. I don't know if you've seen that documentary about the Band of Peace. It's like one of those 4-hour documentaries about ancient Egypt. It's online. You can catch it on YouTube and stuff. And one of the episodes, I believe it's on that show, one of the episodes they discuss a pyramid that's like one over in that Band of Peace where nobody knows about it. There's no tourists that go there really, but it's an entire pyramid, like the Great Pyramid, or it's not quite that big, but it's nearly that big, except that it's all gone. You know, it's only the underground parts that are left to it. There's nothing above ground hardly at all left to this pyramid.
Was it used for something else? Or
the natives came and they took all the stone away and took it into Cairo, basically, and built up sections of Cairo or whatever city is right next to that. I believe it's Cairo. I believe it's still Cairo.
I think you're right, yeah.
Preston, how disappointed are you when you read or you do your own research on some of the stuff that you've looked at? All right, everybody, we're back on Skywatchers Radio, right here live on the Dark Matter Radio Network. Of course, also on PSN Radio. Check us out on skywatchersradio.com. Without further delay, we have our guest of the evening, Mr. Preston Peet, is on the line with us. Preston, welcome to the show. Thank you for being on with us on Skywatchers Radio, my friend.
Good evening, Angel. Thanks for having me, Alan. Thank you, both of you, for having me on tonight.
No worries.
Definitely. My pleasure.
Now, we're going to get into a lot of conversation when it comes to ancient aliens tonight, and I know you've written about the subject. I want to first get your information to the audience of your work before we delve into some of the misconceptions within the ancient alien theory. Tell us a little bit about your background before we start up on the actual ancient alien stuff.
Well, I want to make it understood that I'm the editor of this book, Ancient Aliens, Lost Civilizations, Astonishing Archaeology, and Hidden History, the Disinformation Guide to.
Right.
And I'm the editor, so I both contributed and collected all of the other contributors to the compendium. And my background is really as an investigative journalist, mainly focused on the war on drugs, but I also focus on a lot of other fringe, not status quo, really followed topics. I'm a big conspiracy buff and researcher. I've done a lot of work in that field. And UFOs naturally attract my attention, and ancient aliens is a topic that ties right into my other interests in mysteries of archaeology and ancient civilizations. So I'm always fascinated by the topic, and I've been fascinated by the topic since I was a little kid. I remember being fascinated with the whole aliens bringing people back that they had abducted in Close Encounters of the Third Kind. I remember seeing that as a elementary school student and just being fascinated with it. And Eric Van Doniken was pretty prominent in my life around the same time. I was just becoming aware of his Chariots of the Gods and related topics like that. Nazca lines were another fascinating idea for me. So that really lit into me at a young age. And as I got older, I got the opportunity to see his explanation for that. I'm still dumbfounded at the idea that he spent 3.5 hours belittling other people's belief systems and their desire to believe in ancient aliens, and then turned around and it appeared to me to put it down to, well, actually, they were angels. They were talking about angels. If you read the Bible says that these were angels. These were not aliens. These were angels. And he really made a real Christian slant to it, which is fine. I don't have anything against the Christian slant. I just thought it was interesting that he spent so much time saying this belief is wrong because you must believe in this story. Because I think there's just as little concrete proof for his version of events as there are for ancient aliens' version of events.
That goes back to the question of what are angels in the Bible, or were they misidentified aliens? They thought they were angels or spiritual of some kind. But.
Right. It all depends on your interpretation, right? And how much, who was it, Carl Sagan, that said things that we don't understand, like science today, would be magic to people in the past. And,
Right.
you know, in our future, things that are just commonplace will seem like magic to us. You know, technologies, you know, teleportation would seem magic to me. You know,
Right, if
somebody from one room to the next, you know, or from one country to the next, you know, that Star Trek would seem magic to me.
Right.
You know, just like my cell phone would seem like magic to, you know, to Wyatt Earp. You know,
Can you imagine like building a time machine, going back just 100 years, and taking back like an iPad or a tablet or a smartphone? And, you know, obviously it won't work back then. You know, you won't be able to call anybody, but you know, just to be able to show like them that technology, people will be like, "Wow, that's sorcery. That's magic."
Right. You would have to have some way to prove to them that it did work. But yeah,
Right.
that was the first thing that occurred to me too. Yeah, well, you need to take back the cell phone tower and somebody to actually be at the other end for you to demonstrate. But yeah, I would love to do that. There must be some technology we could take back where we didn't have to jump through that many hoops.
Unless they could find a way to make a smartphone that is so smart that at the at some atomic level, somehow at the quantum level, it can connect to a signal on the other side of the portal. You know, I don't know, something crazy like that. You know, it's funny because there's a video from a Charlie Chaplin movie that surfaced a few years ago. I don't know if you guys have seen this, where there's a lady walking in the video and she could be seen with what looks like a cell phone in her ear, and she's like yapping away. Charlie Chaplin. Obviously, Charlie Chaplin, there was no cell phones back then, so interesting stuff. I mean, that could be proof of time travelers. It could be just coincidence.